welcome to another episode of Keeping It Real, estate related. We're North Star Pro Realty. We've got Tom, Eric, Jeremy, and myself, Tyler, in the studio. And today we are going to be talking about handling lowball offers gracefully. Easier said than done.
Because it is now happening.
It is, as the market is adjusting. I wouldn't say that it's overall a buyer's market, but we are starting to see a lot more aggressive offers from the buyer side, asking for a lot more concessions, reduced offer pricing. And the thing, I have this discussion with my sellers every time. Be prepared for anything, because on the flip side, when I'm working with them on buying a property, I'm always encouraging them to submit an offer that they are comfortable with, whatever that is. I mean, the worst that the other side can say is no. You're not going to get an arm cut off or anything like that for offering too low.
Sometimes they might yell at you and say it's too low, but
they might get upset. But again, that's the position of the agent to kind of walk through that and handle that. So I always kind of try to put my sellers in that frame of mind before we review an offer, especially if it's under asking. And as best as I can, I try to remove the emotion from the situation and just say, here's their offer. Here are the facts of their offer. Here's, what they would like to see. Where do you stand on that? You're not okay with this. You're not okay there. Or, yep, that works. It's lower than what I thought, but we'll go with it. But I think if you prepare them correctly up front, and then walk them through just the facts and try to keep the emotion out of it, the process goes a lot smoother. It's not to say that sellers don't get upset by it and they don't want to work with the other buyer party, but at the end of the day, your end goal is to sell this property, and we want a buyer who wants to buy it. So the market is going to end up dictating what the final price of your home is if you truly want to sell it. And as real estate agents, we want to navigate that process to get our sellers the best deal that we can.
Yeah, and I do think that it's going to be dependent, how you respond is going to be dependent on not just the price of the offer, but also the terms of the offer. For example, I've got a property listed right now that's been sitting for quite a while. It's in pretty rough shape, so we kind of expected that it was going to be there for a little bit. And we have received actually several offers on it. Most of them have been pretty low, but they're numbers that we definitely would have responded to. But when we looked at the rest of the offer, they were just things that we just said, we can't work with that. Like I said, it's a property that's in rough condition, and the first person tried to come in using an FHA loan. And we said, the FHA loan can't even be considered in this situation. It won't qualify in order to be able to purchase the house. So there's no reason to negotiate the price unless you're willing to change the type of financing that you have. So how you respond to that is also going to be what are the other terms. If they're contingent on selling their house and they're not willing to get their house on the market for 2 months, well, you might as well just reject it at that point and say no versus a counter offer. So there are a lot of other things that go into that.
I would agree, and I think it's really valuable, again, as the agent navigating that process, to not respond back to the buyer's agent saying this is a BS offer. Keep it amicable and just say, here are the points that didn't stick with my sellers. And if the sellers aren't in a position where they want to counter, they just want to deny the offer, I try to give constructive feedback to the other side saying, hey, here are the no-goes. We're not going to give a counter offer because I think there's too far of a gap. If you have wiggle room, please resubmit a different offer. And again, these are the bullet points that really didn't gel well with my sellers, and kind of put the ball in their court to come back to us if they truly are interested in the property.
Right, and definitely keep it civil, know, because a lot of times they can come back with a better offer. They can, kind of adjust those points that are important to your sellers.
Correct.
Do you guys ever advise your sellers to say, hey, I know your initial response is, no, we don't like this at all. And then you say, okay, well, how about we try to work with this one? Maybe we respond with a counter offer. Because I think that's something the initial instinct is sometimes worse than what the offer might actually be.
Yeah. So I want to comment on this part because it's a great question, is especially if something's been sitting for a while and then you finally do get that offer and it's lower, is don't be mad at this low offer. Be mad at all of the other people that saw your house and didn't make an offer. This person actually wants your house. So, to get to that emotional threshold of wanting to buy a house, a lot of times, being patient and communicative, big word of the day,
Communicative.
is it's probably going to come together if you've got a buyer wanting to buy and a seller wanting to sell. It's probably going to come together. Now, obviously, there's variables in every single thing, but an agent, if you're trying to close a gap, is those are the biggest things of if you're a buyer's agent trying to get the best deal, over communicate. Don't really wear that price on your heart. And as a listing agent, don't wear that price on your heart. At the end of the day, it is a seller's decision. It is a buyer's decision. And when you say, oh, my sellers aren't going to do that, or my buyers aren't going to do that, it's hey, let's remove it. Hey, we're facilitators in this communication between them. Is hey, the sellers felt that your offer was way too low based on this, and that. Or the buyers felt, hey, we're going to need to do this because it wasn't maintained well, and here's why we're coming in at this price. Kind of just get a different perspective, but really having that conversation with an agent of saying, here it is, and really get off of email and text messages. It's great for like initial conversation, but have a conversation with it. Hey, what's the most important thing? Sometimes people feel the need to negotiate just to negotiate. I have a past customer, and I give him credit all the time, but I'm not going to tell his name right here. And I cleaned up his version a little bit. He said, kick them low, see where they go. And I was like, whoa, okay. He was aggressive. And, it was, he's done a couple of deals now. And, I know that's where it's going to start, because you'd be surprised if a motivated seller, they're going to move. And that really determines what my second move is going to be. Because in Minnesota, nice effect, you guys have all heard me say this, but at the end of the day, Minnesotans don't like confrontation. Midwesterners don't like confrontation. And they only have the appetite for maybe 1 or 2 rounds of negotiation. After that, emotions get high. So you really kind of have to either set the standard of like, hey, if we've got a huge 15% gap, let's respond with this just to kind of see where, it's pickleball. Go back, see how they return it to you. If they take a big chunk, great. There's probably a little bit more room. But as that negotiation gets a little bit less and less, it's like we might be coming to their threshold, but something's always negotiable. Closing
Correct.
date, furniture, price,
Correct.
all of that. So one, it's kind of take it and maybe overeducate the sellers at the point of here's what we're going to do if we get something here, and just really have that conversation. But then just be respectful to the other agent. I'm going to tell you, I've had 2 deals that were negotiated more than a year. And it was the most patient person usually wins. Now, one was a tear-down house, and it was over a hoarder of like 60 years. But it was 82 or 84 acres, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was like we offered like $350,000. It was listed at $450,000. And then over that, it kind of got maybe up to our like 385, which the comps really supported that, and they're still in the low 4s. So we kind of pushed pause, kind of came back, let the season go, and we actually ended up getting it for less than our original offer because we were the most patient ones and didn't move off of it, and it was just opening that communication every 30 days, 60 days, of just saying, all right, let's do this. Now there's some personal things that happen on the seller side, but 13 months of negotiation got a less price than their initial offer. And that happened on another home as well. It was like, well, it's worth more than that, which actually ended up getting there were sellers turning into buyers. Got our sellers more money for their home because of the time it took for the place they wanted to go to accept an offer. And they actually got like a $9,000 discount because it took like 4 months.
Sure.
It was like, okay. But it's just having that, being respectful. Because if you rip the Band-Aid off and you piss somebody off, that's really tough to come back from. And, they kind of are tripping over dollars to pick up pennies, if that's the correct one. Like, once someone gets really emotional about it, there's usually no turning back of, like, you might have ruined your chance of getting this property. So be careful.
Yeah, and that part can be really hard to handle when you do look at a house that you know is overpriced, and you got somebody that likes the house, but they're not willing to overpay for it, which I totally understand. And so you submit their offer and you say, we understand that this is low. Here's the comps that we've used. And when sometimes the reaction you get back is very poor, and there's not really a whole lot that you can do besides that. And you can talk them through it, but I've had one specifically that comes to mind where that was the way that it went, and my buyers didn't buy that house. They ended up finding something else that they said they liked more, a house that was in nicer shape. Yeah. But it was kind of tough to navigate that, where we essentially got to a point where the seller said, you are no longer welcome to submit an offer. Well, about 3 months down the road, we saw that it sold for the exact price that we ended up at in our negotiation, where we said, we'll give you this. And it was like, we could have been there months ago. And like I said, it worked out. It probably worked out for everybody, but it was one of those that sometimes the house just needs a little longer on the market. But as a buyer, you can't not submit your offer and just say they need more time on the market, because someone else could come in, because exactly like you said, you don't know the seller's motivation. Someone else might come in and they go, oh yeah, we'll accept that. And then the buyer goes, oh, well, we would have paid that for the house.
Yeah.
So
I can't tell you how many times I've heard that comment.
Yeah.
From the buyer side. It's like, well, we would have paid that. You didn't submit an offer.
Right.
Yeah.
Your response as I was going back to you was, oh no, price.
We'll wait and see what
different.
he does.
Yeah.
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 This is why I tell my buyers, like, if you have a price, submit your offer. Don't be that person that says, well, I wish I could have got that. Mm-hmm. Let them say no. Let us, once we have an offer on the table, we can actually, from the seller side, we can begin negotiations. But I'm not going to negotiate with you before you submit an offer.
At the end of the day, we're not selling used cars.
Correct.
Or new cars, for that matter. When that puppy dog said, well, I got somebody coming in to take a look at it, the green Ford. Like, okay, well, there's a gazillion green Fords. You can find one next week too. Right. You have time unless you're looking for a very specific car. But like a lot of times, I mean, you are buying one chunk of piece of property that doesn't exist anywhere else. Now, attributes wise, it could exist somewhere else, just 3-bed, 2-bath split, but you are buying one of one. So, I mean, as soon as another person does that because it was cleaner or, better priced, you are saying, hey, that's a real thing, is negotiating with that and saying, if you want this, you should be making an offer.
Mm-hmm. And to, excuse me, for the situation that Eric was just saying where, somebody comes in and is like, well, I would have offered more than that, to kind of mitigate that situation, especially in a competitive offering, for purchasing a home. One thing that I know Eric kind of says something similar where you go to your buyer, they ask you what's going to get it, and you're kind of like, well, this is a very competitive home. What I would do is I would offer to a point where if you get it, you're happy, and if you don't get it, that's okay, because you weren't willing to do better, right? That way that you're missing that situation where, oh man, I would have offered more than that,
Yeah.
But last summer I had some clients who were looking to buy a house, and nobody wants to leave money on the table. They don't want to overspend on something. And the line I like to use is, go up to whatever you're most comfortable with. Like, if you don't get it for this, somebody else comes in and beats you by $5,000. It's going to stink that you didn't get your property, but you're going to be okay with it because you went up to what you were comfortable spending. But if you try to save that $5,000 and you go just under, and somebody goes up to what you would have, you're going to be very upset with yourself. And after I said that, they said, well, that makes sense. And they brought that up several times since then about, I appreciate that advice, because we wouldn't have offered that the first time around, and they ended up winning that in a multi-offer situation and it was like a $2,000 difference. But if they went with their original number, because they didn't want to leave money on the table, they probably wouldn't have gotten a second chance.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So kind of maybe as we wind this little segment down is dealing with this with tact and, lowball offers is where our original conversation started, is we're listing agents, they come back and sometimes that easy answer is just, no, we are just too far apart.
Yep.
Thank you, but no. If you want to resubmit, we can continue that conversation. Sellers want to sell and they are negotiable. Just saying, hey, we could work something out, but we need to be in the same we need to be playing the same sport and in the same ballpark. So, anyway.
Definitely.
Makes sense.
So
Yep.
be respectful and communicative. All right. If you ever want to get a hold of us, you can always visit us at northstarprorealty.com.